You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 226. My name is Clark from 5cardguys.com and 5cardguys on Instagram. Co-hosting with me as usual is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards. John's away for this episode, but we hope to have him back soon. All right, off the top today. Remember HGA, the grading company? Well, they just announced that they aren't accepting any new submissions at this time while they undergo a complete restructuring of their company. And here's what they said exactly in their press release. Quote, "We will finish out the cards we have in our pipeline and then go to work creating this new model and finding the right partner and leader. We will launch a model that focuses on those customers that appreciate our amazing custom labels, our quality cases, and our consistent grading. When we relaunch, our model will be simple, high quality, and really cater to the collector that appreciates the high quality offered by HGA. We realize that we may not be the ideal company for everyone, and that is okay, as there are several other grading companies that fill different niches that can service those customers. For HGA, we will be focused and deliver a quality product." End quote. So for added context, before we take a deeper dive into this discussion, HGA started in 2021 during the COVID years, and they claim to have graded 500,000 cards to date. But when things started to slow down in the hobby, they went under new ownership, if you remember that. Still didn't find success, and now they're trying to relaunch with a new business model, website, and ordering platform. So, thoughts on HGA and their plans to move forward?
So to my knowledge, I believe it was sold twice. So the original guy sold it to Armstrong International, which was, out of all things, energy sector, which didn't make any sense. And recently, two entrepreneurs, I think Josh Smith and Trevor Jones is the name. They acquired it in November. So one, we have our take on HGA just in general. I think I haven't been a customer to date, so that shows you where I'm sending my cards. It's definitely not going to be HGA, just because I think there's a big disconnect with kind of like how we perceive value in the hobby. And I think that plays a direct correlation into HGA's kind of like demise, I would say, because resale value, for instance, is very, very important in the hobby.
Right.
It probably is the number one factor of why people grade. So if you take that out of the equation, it becomes, why would you grade with HGA?
Right.
And like I said, it's not saying everything revolves around money. I'm just saying unbiasedly, it's not my take, it's majority. And you have the few people that will say, it's for my PC, which is great. It serves its purpose then, right? And that's why usually the people that like sending their stuff to HGA is because they do provide value for people that might like their slabs in terms of a looks perspective, right? So I get it. They have a small niche, but I think clearing that vision is important for them as a company. Not trying to be a PSA or compete with the PSA, because you have factors that are going to totally, put you at a huge disadvantage. So one, I think HGA as a whole, I think they have to redefine what they're trying to accomplish and where their space is at. And then two, they have to kind of overcome the challenges that, gave them that backlash in the first place. So stuff like grading, cards that were fake, They did a Tom Brady auto. There's a bunch of stories where, you know, their authenticity process is kind of like iffy, right? So that brings a lot of concerns to potential people submitting, right? And back to the point where if I do grade with HGA, will I get maximum value for my return if I'm selling? Because most people have cycles of why they buy and sell. They're not holding for a lifetime, right? So those are the two main things for me. It's like, it's very, very difficult for any card company, especially when you have somewhat of a monopoly going with all the grading, you know, with Collectors Universe owning PSA and SGC, you know, right. It's very tough to compete with that, right? So you gotta give value elsewhere is what I'm saying.
Yes, excellent point. And, you know, just to add to the list of issues that they had to overcome, the quality of their slabs. I know they talked about in positive terms their quality of the slabs, but from you know people that have reviewed their product, it doesn't seem to be as strong as they would make it seem to appear. And, you know, it's hard to get over that, right? Like when that kind of news is out there, you start to have a reputation. And even, you know, if you try to correct it, you have to really go hard at changing that kind of brand image. And I think that's part of it too. The brand image is kind of, you know, I just feel like it's hard to overcome at this point, if I'm being completely honest. Going, you know, you just mentioned at the beginning, 2 ownership changes. The reason for their success, I would argue, at the beginning was the pandemic hype. Everything was successful at that time. For sure. You know, it was just a volume game. Like you couldn't, you know, it would be extremely hard to fail during 2020, 2021. Right. And 500,000 cards they graded, they said, I wouldn't be surprised if 80% of that was in their first year when
guaranteed, you know, it was. Yeah.
People were just submitting like crazy. And, you know, they mentioned earlier in that press release that part of their problem was they couldn't scale quick enough during that time, you know, because the turnaround times were miserable, just like, to be fair, just like any other grading company. But that's not their issue now. Right. they're just not getting submissions, I bet. You know what I mean?
100%. So and then it becomes an overhead issue, right? So it's like you invested all this money in the operations part, but then now you're not selling enough, right? So what happens to the quality of work? How many people are actually working? You know, it becomes a mess. And that's what people don't understand in business. I will tell you, it's easy to get the initial kind of like traction. It's very, very hard to scale because internally, it's the internal growth that kind of is the tough thing to kind of overcome in any business. Is external growth. That's the easy part. Right. Internal growth is the very, very hard part. And that's what I think they're stuck in is, you're right. During COVID, they couldn't keep up with the demand. But as soon as demand pulls back, they have a bunch of overhead, which they can't afford now because they're not getting the sales in the door, right? So it becomes kind of like, okay, where do we go from here? And that's part of it is I think they have to go with a whole different approach. They can't keep on doing things that worked 2-3 years ago. They're going to get the same results as they're getting today. So it's like, what do we have to do to now change? And I still do think there's enough space in the hobby for multiple independent graders because they all serve its purpose. As long as they know their niche, I think they will have a fan base at the end of the day. Because people do like the designs. They do like their slabs, you know. And most of what I've heard from conversations is, well, we're not in it to just resell. Right? So it seems to me that it's more PC based.
I agree.
Right? Yeah, and how the slab looks.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I hate how the slab looks, if I'm being completely honest. I hate the customization. I like things standard, you know. But you know, like to your point, there might be people that, you know, like it more personalized to them. Like it, the color of the slab label to be closely matched to the card itself. You know, if that's what you like, it's all good. You know, but is there a big enough market to sustain a business like that. If you're going to be a niche market like that, and I think that's what they're pondering right now as they restructure, right? They're, if they're two entrepreneurs, it's kind of a conflict a little bit, don't you think? It's like you want to grow the business, but there's a cap. Right. If that's what you're focusing on. There's a very niche market where you're going for the PC collector that love customized slabs. I don't know how big that is, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's either that, or they have to like really invest in technology where they're the front runners and they do a totally relaunch and that's the thing, technology keeps on changing. So research and development is so crucial in a company. And I just don't know if they have that mindset of being able to be a front runner in the industry, which collectors would probably be the front runner in that. So, and that's to say also from a collector standpoint, it's like if I'm PSA, I'm spending enormous amounts of money and energy on future research and development because I want to be the front runner in even AI technology. Like the whole allure originally on HGA was that it was using AI and it's a hybrid approach. And, but like I said, 2 years ago, that was kind of like the talk, but now it's like PSA is still doing the same thing and they're fine. Right. Mm-hmm. But there's going to be a point in time where, you're going to have to be able to speed up the process where grading isn't subjective, where you set standards and it's an unbiased way of grading a card. There's no human error where somebody could be having a bad day or, whatever it may be. There's going to be a point in time where I think they have to be the front runners. That's collectors, PSA. So, but I don't think HGA is that type where they have to go back to stick with your niche. I think there's a good play in that. There's money to be made. You could still be profitable. You don't have to be a massive, company, right? And then you just kind of scale downwards to kind of fit where your power is. Yep.
While you're talking, I'm like, if I worked at HGA, what would I brainstorm? What would I say? Like, what's our value add over, PSA? I got a couple ideas. All right. These ideas are free for you guys at HGA. One, because they're into customized labels, which I don't like, but I know some collectors out there do. Why don't you hire graphic designers, like artists, and they could do an amazing job with the slab label. If you're going to go unique all the way. Go fully customized and, you just, hire some contract artists, right? And they could do a great job for you. And then it's for your PC anyway, right? Two, if they're really invested into the technology aspect of it, why don't you focus on, and this will serve two purposes, make a slab that is almost like indestructible, okay? And then you start to those cases that do those commercials or videos where they drop it off from
phone.
Or the phone, phone cases too. Yeah, like on top of the building. Yeah. You do that for the slabs. You're like, no scratch, indestructible, and you get it within 5 days. That could be your pitch to the masses. You know what I mean? So I don't know if they had the money to invest in that technology themselves or to do that kind of R&D, but just a couple ideas.
I think the first point you mentioned, I think that's kind of their crutch though. Like the labels are cool and all, but I think that's what kind of set them back was if you have to hire people an extra step to be able to create like a label. Mm-hmm. I think that's what hinders them. And their solution, I think they say they have thousands of templates in their library so that you could pick the label, because before it was like full custom label and stuff like that. But now it's like they realize, you can't really scale that, right? Scaling that is very, very difficult, because then if you have 500,000 cards you're grading, then you have to get someone to create 500,000 new labels, right? Is how do you streamline that process where it's quick and easy, because PSA is just popping it in, pressing print, and that's their label, right?
Okay,
so that's the only thing that I'm like, okay, I think that's. Sure. But the other point, I would definitely pitch that marketing idea to drop a slab on a 10-foot building and then do it to a PSA slab, do it to a Beckett slab, and then do it to the new HGA slab.
Right. See, or we're building on something here. I'm going to go back to the first idea before we move on to the next segment. Okay, I hear your point about, taking time, and how about if you just partner with, it's becoming big now? Custom card designers. Right? You got those custom card makers. There's a bunch of them now. Maybe you partner with, maybe that's your niche. You partner with those guys.
Right.
You create a case or slab for them, work with what they need. And then you just work with the different custom cards. And then that's becoming,
I could stand behind that for sure. Here's why. Is because they actually hold their non I guess cards. So it's fake cards. So
okay.
like you could send in your whatever you want and they'll slab it. But they won't obviously slab it with grades. It would be a custom label for HGA saying that like so I would target all the custom card, do a custom program like for custom cards. Right. And then they could push to their customer base, whoever purchases custom cards for them, like Kev's cards. He was big during COVID where he was making one of the sickest, like he made so many sick cards. I would target like him. If he has like, 1,000 customers, for instance, perfect. Partner up with him, do a custom program with the custom card because PSA won't slab those.
Yeah.
Right.
Piggy Banks, another guy we have had on the podcast.
We're just giving
He's growing like crazy.
Free business info out here.
Hyung, this is what we do, right? Like,
just give value, man. Just give value.
Just give value. We're both entrepreneurial. We like to just brainstorm ideas. So what we do. All right. I think I didn't think we were going to spend this much time on HGA, but let's move on now to hobby headlines. Okay. Now I'm sure you've heard about the rebranding of PWCC. They're now known as Fanatics Collect. Honestly, I always forget Fanatics acquired PWCC a while ago, but here we are. Anyway, just like HGA hopes to do, Fanatics Collect relaunched under its new brand name with a new website. And in my opinion, it looks much cleaner. If you haven't checked it out, it looks more user-friendly. But that's not all. Fanatics Collect, they also announced a partnership with PSA to streamline the process of submitting raw cards to Fanatics Collect, then getting it graded with PSA, and then either vaulting it with Fanatics Collect or putting it up for auction on their new website. And if that sounds familiar to you, you just got to swap out everything I said about Fanatics Collect with eBay, because that's what they're doing as well. Something very similar to that with their own partnership with PSA, which we talked about in a previous podcast episode. So a lot of new development going on here. And I want to start with the revamped Fanatics Collect brand, formerly PWCC. My question is, do you think they pose a serious threat now to such competitors as eBay and even Golden Auctions? Or do you think those competitors and even other online auction websites, they just see Fanatics Collect as pretty much the same as PWCC under a new name, where, I feel like they weren't too worried about PWCC back then, and that's just how they're envisioning things? Or do you think things are different?
I think things are different. This is the way I see it. I broke this down, and it's interesting because when I actually did some research on this, I was like, okay, 3 main players in the game. Okay. You have, this is like a soap opera. I call it the soap opera of the sports card industry. You have 3 big players in the game. All right. Okay. Fanatics, collectors, and eBay. Okay. Each bring enormous value in the hobby. So we'll break down Fanatics. Tops, PWCC, along with their, previous business of collectibles and memorabilia. Then you have collectors, which owns PSA, SGC, PCGS, WADA, PSA Vault, right?
Card Ladder. Yeah.
Card Ladder, okay. Then you have eBay, Golden Auction, right?
Yeah.
And partnered up with PSA. So collectors is in a great position because they are the middle person in this whole equation, and you have 2 parties, and I wouldn't even be surprised if they're duking it out, but they're duking it out, right? And they created two similar services. So Fanatics, remember, they own Topps and PWCC. So Topps is a manufacturer of sports cards. So obviously they have to partner up with PSA.
Yep.
eBay is the biggest platform in the marketplace, right? They also partnered up with PSA.
Yep.
Okay. So in the end, Collectors is winning on this whole deal.
Yeah.
And to give you context, Fanatics is probably worth about $30 billion. eBay is probably similar, $30 billion. Collectors is worth $854 million right now.
Interesting.
So to me, this is a way Collectors, they created a service that both needed, and they have the two biggest customers now.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, whether it's intentional, that they're all like, you know what? Because if you think about it, who owned Golden before this? It was Collectors.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Wow.
So you have these three big time brands that are creating the future business of the way we collect in the hobby. And in the middle of it is Collectors, who's the smallest out of all three, which is crazy, right? They're basically going to bank off this because everybody's using PSA service.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's smart to be honest. I think all of this is intentional. Everybody's connected in some sort of way, and it leads back to PSA, right? Which is not owned by either brands, but each brand brings a massive piece. So Topps, the manufacturer,
Yeah.
Collectors, the middle grading and the vault service, and then eBay, the marketplace. So it's like eBay had to be just as good as Fanatics on their end. So they acquired PWCC. eBay has Golden. They both partner up with PSA and provide the same service.
I see how you see it as a soap opera. They're both wooing PSA or Collectors, you know what I mean?
They're
just really trying to be the significant other, and they're fighting. Fanatics and eBay are fighting it out. Yeah, that's crazy. I love how you envision the whole scenario right now. You kind of answered my the question I had next, which is PSA the ultimate winner here? And obviously we both agree, right?
Absolutely.
We both agree. Because it's so easy for them to just, forget about eBay and forget about Fanatics for now. Remember we were talking about Walmart a week ago or 2 weeks ago, them, starting their own collectibles platform online. It's so easy for Collectors / PSA to offer a similar deal to Walmart collectibles. That's in fact what we suggested on our podcast that they do. Hey, you got to strike up a deal with PSA. And again, who's the winner in that deal? PSA. They just offer to any new auction platform, small or big. They're like, hey, let's just partner up. We'll streamline the process for you. You don't have to worry about the grading part of it. You could promote it to your customers saying, hey, you just ship it to one place, whether it's Walmart, whether it's eBay, whether it's Fanatics Collect now. Guess what? PSA will take care of the rest in the back, and that's kind of brilliant by Collectors to just set up a system that way.
And I think this is a learning lesson for all the entrepreneurs out there. If you're wanting to get into entrepreneurship, learn how to sell. And the way you sell is problem solution. You don't sell your product. PSA is not selling slabs right now. They've come up with the solution to streamline the process of the problem that they see in the whole process. And they're trying to make it better and easier, right? While making money. And it's the same thing. It's like whether they do it to a Walmart now, whether that happens or not, the fact that they're in the driver's seat because they've created a process where it creates a solution to Fanatics' problem. It creates a solution to eBay's problem. It will create a solution to a future marketplace, whether it's Walmart or the next biggest marketplace there is. If the industry is running that way, and PSA is the one who controls the whole process, that's a problem solution. And they're going to always win because they're selling based on problem solution, right? So they're creating a solution that can make eBay better. They're creating a solution that can make Fanatics better. So you're not going anywhere else, right? So for me, it's genius. It's, these guys are playing chess, and for right reasons. Like, we only see the outside and we always talk crap. Oh, they don't know what they're doing. They're making so much. Trust me, man. If they're making that much money, they're doing everything intentional to make that much money.
Yeah.
And it's honestly, I tell you this off air, Clark. You know, when we do these podcasts, it's great because it forces us to kind of audit what's going on in our hobby. And maybe we're wrong, but for me, it's like I see what I see based on kind of like what I do for a living as well. So it gives us good context of what's actually going on in our hobby and how these big guys are making the moves, what the future looks like with our hobby. Because if you just look at it in the lens of, oh, this happens all the time. Every week somebody's buying something and they're monopolizing and it's doom and gloom. The hobby's dead. You know, breakers suck. You know, I don't know where breakers came in, but we had to throw that in just because, you know, that's just a ongoing narrative. I think it's genius, to be honest. And I really believe that Collectors is in the driver's seat, and rightfully so. They're not even $1 billion valuation right now, whereas Fanatics is 30 and eBay's close to 30. So, it's interesting.
Do you envision a scenario where Collectors becomes the dominant player, or is that a ways to go?
I think it's a ways to go. I think they would be a dominant player in the hobby. But you got to remember, it's like the reason why Fanatics is so big is not because of Topps. It's not because of PWCC. It's because of the resources outside of the sports card industry, as well as eBay, right? It's their platform that brings a lot of value. It's not necessarily the fact that they sell sports cards.
That's true.
Right? It's a huge part of their business, but like Fanatics, for instance, memorabilia becomes a huge part of their business. So if they could leverage all that, they're always going to have the upper hand in their resources in the sports cards, where Collectors, you know, they're in the sports card, or I would say trading card, as their main kind of focus, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And, you know, I would also argue that Fanatics, their major thing or most valuable thing is all their licensing deals.
Right.
Man, they could just like print money off of those, you know? And so like, I think it's a good point that you bring up too, that what we see as hobbyists or as collectors, as content creators in this space, we sometimes fail to see the bigger picture of these billion-dollar companies. They're not just thinking, breathing sports cards or trading cards like we are, as you know, they're thinking bigger picture. And to your point again, like things change so quickly, like where revenue comes from, and these corporations are usually always ready to pivot when necessary, you know? And you know what a good example of that is? I'm listening to a podcast called Land of the Giants, and they focus every season on this different large corporation. And this season it's about Disney. And for the longest time, Disney's cash cow, do you know what it was for the longest time? It was ESPN. They were just printing money in the heyday of ESPN, you know, before streaming, of course, right? They took revenue from ESPN and they just funneled back into their Disney company, right? And now ESPN is not their cash cow. It's because of streaming and everything else. And you know what it is now? It's back on their theme parks, where they're just printing money by people going to Disney World, Disneyland. So it changes all the time. And you know, that's why it's good to have like a diverse portfolio, I guess, you know? And Fanatics is doing that. Collector seems to be doing that. And eBay is doing that through all their different acquisitions, because you just don't know where the revenue is going to come from at any given point, and you use that to your advantage.
Absolutely. And we know that, you know, number one rule in business is you got to always, you know, pivot. You can't stay the same. You know, look at Blockbuster, perfect example. You know, if you don't go, you don't pivot, you know, somebody like Netflix will end up, you know, crushing you, right? So it's like stuff like that where, and I don't know if you remember, but Netflix was like, it was that box in grocery stores that you would rent videos.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So perfect example to a streaming service, right? So it's the same thing. You got to be able to adapt quickly. You got to be able to forecast the future. You got to look at it from a macroeconomics perspective. You got to look at it from a technology standpoint of where society's going. There's a lot of things at play that, we just the general hobbyists, we don't really look at, right? And vice versa. I don't think Michael Rubin has ever opened up a pack of cards in his life before. Maybe he has, but like he's not interested in, ripping or like the actual cards that, Topps owns, right? So it's one of those things where it's a totally different perspective.
Yes. He cares more about everyone else in the industry opening packs because that's just lining his wallet.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So let's bring it back to the hobby once again. I love business talk, but one question I had based on everything that's gone on so far, do you think BGS is screwed? Do you think Beckett is, to the point where they have to do something drastic now to get back into the game?
Yeah, I think Beckett needs to, like everything we talked about, they have to be able to, it's going to be tough independently, like for them to do this by themselves and be able to be a giant. But I think they had stuff that, other brands don't, like HGA doesn't. So it's like you have to be able to use your resource. And if anything, you got to invest in marketing too. If you want to be a big player in the game, which I still think Beckett has a rich history. They have a big name. There's no reason why, a bigger brand can't pick up Beckett and, take it to where Beckett needs to go, because I think they do have, even through all this, like, trash talking about Beckett over the last couple of years, I don't mind a BGS slab.
Same.
You know what I mean? Like,
I'm on record saying that. Yeah,
I'm on record. I have no problem with BGS slabs or owning BGS slabs to this day. I still think it's solid. They grade properly. If I have a True Gem candidate, I know that it's a PSA 10 candidate. So like at the end of the day, their product is great. Their brand is great. It's just a matter of them getting bigger support. So if they're not going to do it internally and get like private equity to get them to where they need to be, then a bigger company that has different resources that maybe, can pick them up will get them there. But for me, if I had the money, I'm buying BGS. I'm buying Beckett for sure. I think it's a low hanging fruit, to be honest. Yeah,
no, I agree. I think I don't want to say running out of time, but I think they do have to do something pretty drastic in terms of, whatever it'll take to get an influx of cash to really grow their business at this point, because I don't think they can afford much longer to stay status quo,
Yeah.
All these moves, it seems every other week we're doing an episode on Fanatics or collectors or PSA. Like there's a lot going on and things are moving quickly. And I think, I don't know if it's because Beckett hasn't done anything on their social media lately, or they haven't done anything consistently, but they're not even showing up on my algorithm. Like They're not even showing up on my feeds anymore, and then every once in a while I'll have to actually search Beckett Collects on Instagram to see, hey, oh, they're still there. Okay, good. They didn't shut down or anything, So yeah, I am with you. I'm still a BGS collector. I think there's tremendous value in cards that are slabbed in BGS, because they are trustworthy, but man, they got to do something more. So that's the question I had based on all the news that's been coming out. So hopefully BGS, I don't know, hopefully we hear big news from them at some point. All right, let's move on to a new segment we're doing called Q&A. So this is essentially like a mailbag segment. We haven't done this in a while, or we usually get questions from random people, random listeners, and then we try to incorporate it in the off the top section or other parts of the show. But we got one from Mike G of Wisconsin, and he sent us 3-4 questions, and I thought we could just do all of them in one segment, and that's why we got this Q&A segment right now. All right, and he mentioned in the email that he's like a lot of people. He's in his 40s. collected as a kid, I think, and then he's coming back to the hobby and just relearning everything we went through 5, 6, 7 years ago. So I think this will be good to do because I'm sure he's not the only one that's come back to the hobby. And this is why I'm bullish too, because we talk about like, oh, you remember the pandemic years, but there's still people coming into the hobby right now and getting re-engaged in what the hobby is and with all the changes. So, so yeah, some of these questions might be basic to some, but I think to others, it'll be helpful. So the first question, and this one's the easy one, are PSA or SGA cards generally more valuable or coveted if they grade out the same? And I can answer this one quickly, but I got to follow up for you, Hyung. Obviously, PSA 10 versus SGC 10. Sorry, he said SGA, but it's SGC.
Yeah, it's SGC, I think.
Right, yeah. I'm like, SGA, SGC, what was it?
I was SGC. Like, man, this is another grading company that I don't know about.
HGA, there's so many. Sorry. PSA 10 is obviously much more valuable than SGC 10, just to answer his question straight out, even if they grade the same. But my follow-up question is, what is the premium on a PSA 10 versus SGC 10? Just to give more value to Mike. And I just did a couple of quick comparisons or quick research on a couple of cards. So the 2018 Bowman Shohei Ohtani rookie card, just the base, number 1 in that set. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I believe it's sold recently in a PSA 10 for $600. $600. Okay. And then an SGC 10 slab, it's sold for $500. Right. So that's just a more modern base card graded in a PSA 10 slab and SGC 10. That works out to be about a 30% premium for that card. Right. And of course, it depends on the card itself, depends what year it's from. So if you look at the Ken Griffey Upper Deck 1989 rookie card, the iconic 1989 Upper Deck rookie card, a PSA 10 goes for about $2,000 right now, right? And the SGC 10 recently sold for $1,100. So obviously much more of a premium there, 80% or so. So in other words, you got to do your own research. Look, every card's a bit different, but I would say on average, and this is just me, my opinion, I almost put a 30 to 40% premium on modern cards. Is that fair, do you think?
I think that's fair right now. And that's why it's like it will change. It could change in the future because it's all about supply, demand, and our perception of perceived value, right? At the end of the day. So there might be a time where, people think SGC at an 80% discount is way more valuable than paying an 80% premium with PSA. So it takes time for it's all dependent on the user until us as hobbyists deem what's valuable, because it's all supply demand at the end of the day, right? So if more people demand a SGC slab at an 80% discount price, that gap's gonna close. But then, and who knows, in the future, 5 years from now, it could totally change. It could even out. We could look back and say, remember that time when, PSA was selling like 80% over SGC? Not saying it will change, that drastically, or it could go the other way where SGC drops value. And that's all predicated on supply demand. How people perceive a SGC 10. Like for me, for instance, what's that worth to you right now, Clark? A PSA 10 over SGC. Would you say it's 30% more?
Yeah.
That you would buy a SGC slab at 30% discount right now, or more over at PSA 10.
I go the other way. I spend 30% more for PSA 10.
Okay,
slab.
Which is fair.
Right.
So you would view it as PSA is far superior. You rather spend, but what's that number? What about 60%? 70%?
Yeah.
80%?
So when we get over 80%, yeah, for sure. Like anything over 50%,
right,
it's card by card basis at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, but that's what I'm saying. So the more people that have that thought process and they start purchasing at that 50% discount, that 80% will go up. You know what I mean? It will, because it's all about supply demand now, right? People think it's a good deal. So they would they would be in the marketplace for a SGC 10 slab now, where they weren't before.
Yeah. And so that's a more in-depth answer to Mike's question. And to your point, it also, the supply and demand is also tricky, right? Like what makes a graded card more in supply, more in demand,
right,
than other graded cards. And then you could look at like pop counts, right? Population counts. It's like, is SGC giving out these 10s like crazy? Or we know what PSA 10, Ken Griffey Jr., for example, it's not easy to get that, right? So there's kind of a pop count control over the Griffey upper deck. So that's another thing to consider.
Rate, like a gem rate. Yeah, yes. Percentage. So if it's like a 2% gem rate, so on PSA on the Griffey, I don't know what it is. It might be 1% or 2% or 3%, whatever it is. Yeah. Then that would be a lot more demanding for a PSA 10 versus, SGC 10 where they might be up at like 8%, 9%.
Yeah.
Good point.
All right. There you go. Mike probably has 3 more questions based on that answer. We answered the first one. Okay, the second question he had, and I had to read this twice, but I think I get what he's trying to say. If a retailer like Target has multiple boxes of cards within the main cardboard box, or a case, I guess, that it ships in, are the card packs within the same case more prone or likely to have doubles than a completely separate cardboard retailer box or a case? That's what I'm taking the question as. So if you got blasters, so when we're talking about retailers, you're probably talking about more blaster boxes, like not the hobby boxes, Mike. So blaster boxes contain usually 6 or 7 packs, or mega boxes, which have a little bit more. If they all come from the same case, do you think there are more doubles from the blaster boxes within the same case?
That's an interesting question. One, let's clarify retail for those that don't know, like retail versus, because maybe he's thinking in cases in general. So even dealers are retail technically. Mm-hmm. But in our hobby, like it's more retail's considered Walmart's, the Targets, whereas hobby shops would be selling hobby boxes and jumbo boxes, so they wouldn't be considered retailers. But I don't know if
card stores.
Yeah, card stores. They're dealers, right? So, but either way, I think you're going to get a lot of repeating cards just because there's just the numbers alone. The base cards you're going to get tons of them, like constantly. That's a given. And I think most people anyways search for the auto or any hits, right? So that's basically what you're going to get is, the hits are going to be your chase, and then your base cards, you're going to get a ton of the same repetitive cards. You can't control that because there's even like Topps Chrome, for instance, if there's 300 card set, right? And then you buy a jumbo box that has however many cards, and then you buy a case, and then there's whatever it is, thousands of cards. You're going to get a lot of the repeating cards, right? And you're basically going to be chasing the parallels. Yeah.
Even within the box, one box itself, you might get doubles, right? So yeah. The follow-up question to that would be, if he's talking about case hits, then there's, then that's something to think about, right? Because if there are case hits, especially when we're talking about not retail, but in hobby shops, local card stores, then yes, if there's like one case hit per case, then you won't find another case hit within the 12 boxes within that case. Right. So that's at another level. But if you're just talking about base cards, like Hyung was explaining, you're gonna get a ton of those doubles, regardless of which case it comes from.
And there are many times I opened up, boxes within a case, right? Yeah. And then I would literally get the same autos. So I and sometimes it works to your benefit, because if it's a chase player and you get multiple autos of that player in different parallels and even base autos, then it's worth it. But it's the worst when you get a meaningless auto and then you get like 4 of them within that case. You're like, what is going on? So that's on Topps. That's on the manufacturer not collating it, properly, where it's randomized. But I've seen both. I've seen instances where it's like one after the other. I've seen it work to people's benefits. I've seen it work against people as well. But yeah.
Yep. True. Fair warning. All right. Third question he had. He says, let's say I pull a $1,000 autographed NBA card randomly out of a pack. Besides grading, what type of conditions or factors will make the card value drastically increase or decrease?
I think obviously the player's performance is the number one thing, or even relevancy, right? Like,
sure.
It doesn't necessarily have to be player performance. So for instance, somebody signs a $200 million 7-year contract. I think more people are going to be more invested in purchasing that card. So wanting that card, creating more demand for that, right? So usually when, for instance, Jackson Churio, I remember, when he had that huge contract before he played a single major league game, you seen an enormous spike in his price.
Yeah, the hype.
Yeah. So there's that aspect. Eye appeal, I think. Cards that just people really like. I think I see this with Ohtani cards all the time. It's funny because I went through my common cards again and I haven't opened these boxes in years. Like, we're talking, when I ripped 2018 Topps Update, I just forgot about them and just put them in a box, and I haven't opened them up in 6 years. And I went through it and I found all these Ohtani cards, right? Like, just basic, basic cards that I thought were just trash, common cards, but PSA 10 is selling for like $80, $90. So I'm like, I'm going to grade these, right? But I'm like, why would people buy this? And then I realized, you know what? This card does have eye appeal. And then I look at 3rd or 4th year Ohtani cards, and then there's a rookie card of Ohtani that's not selling well, but then a 2nd year or 3rd year card like Stadium Club Chrome, the SP refractor, like such a great looking card, and it sells for a premium, right? So I think eye appeal is massive. I think on card auto versus sticker auto would be another factor.
Good one
of a premium. But it all depends, I think.
Yeah. No, those are good ones you pointed out. The only thing I'll add too is, like, if your 1,000 autograph basketball card is serial numbered to 99 versus a base card, like, over time, even now, we've seen the market kind of decrease, the serial number will hold up much better in value than the base card, non-numbered autograph card that you have, right? So that's something to consider over time as well, which is why I've liquidated a lot of my base autos, and I would rather invest in colored parallel autographs that are numbered, right?
Times have changed. I remember I remember everybody was after the base chase.
Oh man, I
shout out to Will Choi.
Oh man, you guys, you know what? I'm blaming you guys. I was never into the base game, but then during the hype of the hobby, everyone's like making cash. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna dip into the base game, and then shortly thereafter, everything crashed. So that's lesson learned. I should have stuck to my guns. All right, last question that he had. He says, obviously, it's much tougher to find a card from the 70s or earlier graded high, so the vintage cards. Would a grading card company factor in the age and be more lenient with the grading number because it is old? Good question.
That's a great question. Which kind of sucks. We always talk about this because subjectivity of grading, right? It's like, how do you know you're grading apples to apples within the same card, right? But that's just the way the industry is. I think, especially with vintage, they're picky, way pickier with vintage. And if you submit a vintage card or an older card right now and you expect a PSA 10, most likely it's not going to happen if it hasn't been graded before, right? Yeah. So it's tough because I think they're going to be tougher on the grade, just based on the age of it, as well. So yeah, I would say, they would be a lot tougher on vintage cards or older cards. Yeah.
Yeah. Just because for some of these vintage cards, the value could exponentially increase
just by one pick of a grade.
Exactly. From 8 to 9, 9 to 10. And honestly, it's all relative to one another. So if you're going the other way, if it's like a really obviously it's a poor condition card, would they be more lenient? Say like, okay, we'll bump it up a grade, although it's like fuzzy corners. No, they'll probably still get a PSA 2 or 1 or 3, but likely most of the cards will be in that same grade range because you're not going to find a crisp 1948 Leaf Jackie Robinson,
right?
You know,
and it works both ways too, because then what buyers do is they try to find the best like PSA 4 or PSA 5,
yes.
the best eye peel, the most centered, you know. Right. So there's value in that as well.
Yep, great question, Mike. Appreciate you sending the email in, and for any of you other listeners that have questions for us, we'd be happy to accept it and do another segment like this in the future. All right, let's end off our show with our regular weekly segment we call Pick One. And this is when Hyung and I will take 2 cards and then we debate which one we would rather invest in. All right, so Hyung, as usual, do you want to start things off for us?
Sure. I'm gonna use our buddy Josh at Inspired Sports Cards. He private messaged me, and I thought it was a really good pick one because he kind of stumped me, and I kind of went back and forth on this, and I am still going back and forth on this. I don't know what the right answer is, and maybe Clark, you could shed some light, and maybe our audience could shed some light on this. But we're going back to Shohei Ohtani. So Josh has a really cool non-licensed card, and before I say non-licensed, I know that's a bad word for a lot of us here. But
except for Will. Okay, yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, yes, except for Will. And you know what? In certain cards, I don't mind non-licensed, this being one of them. Okay. So Josh basically has a 2018 Panini Optic, right? Mm-hmm. So non-licensed, Shohei Ohtani, rated rookie signature. It's a white box 1 of 1.
White box, okay.
Okay, so I have to do more research on what the white box 1 of 1 actually means. But my take is that, you know, they manufactured it as 1 of 1. So it could contain the same color. The color is orange, and it is designated as a 1 of 1. So
what do you mean the color is orange?
Like the color of the card, like it's a parallel, an orange parallel, right?
It's 1 of 1.
It's a 1 of 1. But I don't know if orange parallels do exist in this set. I didn't do enough research, but it's an on-card auto of Ohtani's, you know, original autograph. Very clean auto. It's one of the cleaner autos where it's really legible. And I'm going to pair that up. So that was graded a PSA 9, but it's a 1 of 1. Okay?
Yeah.
Would you have that or a 2018 Topps Heritage Shohei Ohtani red ink auto numbered to 69, right? Where he's not wearing a hat in a PSA 8. I have an idea of like my initial gut is the red ink is like such a massive card. Yeah. But then it goes back to, well, it depends on the way you see it, right? It's like, well, you have an on-card auto with Shohei. It's a 1 of 1, right? Same year. Mm-hmm. And the PSA 8, I think it's the median of the population. So it's not, there's some PSA 9s out there and some PSA 10s out there. So what would you go with? Would you go with the licensed red ink, or would you go with the non-licensed 1 of 1?
Before I answer, the white box, when I messaged Daryl, he corrected us about the redemption process with Panini. Right? And white box, I think he says it's in levels. So if you have a high value redemption, they'll give you a white box, like whatever that level is. Right. So it's at a certain level. So it's got to be one of the higher valued redemptions if we're talking about the Shohei Ohtani 1 of 1, right? Right. So that being said, I'm still going with the Topps Heritage. I don't know. You can call me a licensing snob at the end of the day, but on top of that, it is still numbered to 69 or 75?
69. Yeah, that
69. Year. It's still numbered to 69. Low serial number.
I'm gonna show you really quick an image before you make your decision. So that's basically
right.
The 1 of 1.
Yeah.
which is nice. And then the red ink no hat is this one. But that's a PSA 8.
Dude, I'm still going with the license.
Yeah?
Like the red pajama shirt is just too glaring for me. I can't I can't get over that, you know? Yeah, so I guess it's at the end of the day, it might be personal preference. Although the 1 of 1 obviously is, you know, what's appealing for the white box card, the 1 of 1 obviously, but the rated rookie for me is like, I love that. I grew up with that too, so that kind of plays into the whole nostalgia factor. But at the end of the day, I think I'll just go with the Topps Heritage because I love that set too.
So yeah, I've been going back and forth with this. Like I told Josh, it's like, man, like normally I would go for the, you know, Topps Heritage red ink. Like, but then I'm like, okay, this is a little different in this story. But then now I'm going back to the red ink again.
Okay.
For me, I think because I love red ink. Yes. I think the Topps Heritage red ink is a brand in itself. And I personally love Topps Heritage, so I think gold refractors in Topps Heritage, so underrated. People don't even know gold refractors exist in Topps Heritage. That's how rare it is, right? Then you have, you know, black chrome refractors in Heritage that are massively in demand. Mm-hmm. The regular refractors are massively in demand for Topps Heritage, and then all the base cards kind of suck. They're all like it's a lower end set. And then you have the real one autos, which is kind of like the rookie on-card autos, which is great. And then you have the red ink where it's numbered to 69 or 71. Every year they increase it. But during Ohtani's year, it was 69. And it's such a brand in itself, the red ink. So for me, that's why I keep on going back to it, is I just love the red ink brand. If it was a Topps Chrome rookie auto, I think it would be different for me, just because I really like the red ink. So that's why I'm going back and forth. I told Josh before I would want the one of one, and then maybe next week it switches. So I don't know if that helped you out. We probably confused you more, but because Josh is the one with the optic. Rated
he has that one.
Yeah, he has that one. So it's
a nice card.
He was going to trade it for the red ink. So that was his initial gut instinct. He was actually going to trade it one for one.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a perfect 1v1, right? So I guess right now what we're saying, Josh, is do the deal. But don't.
It's up to you.
Yeah. I take no responsibility in this transaction.
That's a good one though.
Maybe we could do a pick
Josh.
one on 5 card guys, like a poll.
Yeah, actually,
help Josh out, and then we'll do that for sure. We'll send it to him.
Yeah, I'll do that when this episode comes out. All right, my pick one is going back to the Ken Griffey Jr. 1989 Upper Deck rookie card, PSA 10. Pop count's just over 4,000. Like I mentioned earlier, it's going for about 2,000. Okay, would you like to have that iconic card in a PSA 10, or the 2024 Topps Chrome, which just came out? If you didn't know, there's Ken Griffey Jr. on-card autos in the set, and he only signed, I believe, 81 or 91 cards, right? And the lowest serial number is out of 50. It's not gold. I think it's just called Topps Chrome. It's out of 50. There is a super out of that, and there's I think the
super looks beautiful. Holy jeez, that super refractor looks amazing. I didn't
see from the Topps Chrome.
Yeah, from the Topps Chrome. Yeah, they released it. Yeah, they released it early, just the image of it, and with his auto, and it's such a gorgeous card. Dude, so much eye appeal.
And Ken Griffey Jr. has one of the best autos in the game. You know, and so it's really nice auto. Would you have the 2024 Topps Chrome Ken Griffey Jr. auto really number to 50? It's listed for $2,500. I believe there was one sold yesterday for under 18. So let's say 2,000 on average. Okay, there's a couple listed for $2,500 right now, but if you get on best offer for 2,000, would you have that card or the 1989 Upper Deck?
Here's the problem. Rookie? Here's the problem, Clark. I have a problem with this.
Okay, I'm listening.
Like, It's just a Ken Griffey Jr. auto on card. I don't think it's worth $2,000.
Okay.
There's problem
Number to
one.
50.
Doesn't matter. That should be worth a few $100. But here's the other problem I have. Pop 4,000 at $2,000. That scares me too.
Yes.
But which is crazy. The crazy thing about this is that I bought those PSA 10 Griffies for like $600 at one point. So the fact that it's still at 2,000, it's been floating from 1,000 to 2,000 probably for the last 3 years in a down market.
Mm-hmm.
But Pop 4,000 really concerns me. So those are the two problems. So this is a really good, actually 1v1.
Yes.
And my normal gut is telling me the Griffey PSA 10 is the way to go. But that Pop 4,000 is really bugging me.
You know what's funny? While you think about it, when I had Brent, Deep Value Investor, on the podcast the second time, I don't know if he mentioned it on air, but definitely off air, he said he was looking at the PSA 10 Ken Griffey, and he made the same point. He's like, dude, that's been stable at 2,000 for the last, I just looked on Card Ladder, for the last 3 years now. It has not moved from that 2,000 mark. So
That's
it's
crazy.
Stable right there. Yeah. Anyway.
That's crazy. That just shows you that how iconic of a card that is, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got to go with PSA 10 just because, like, to me, that if it dropped, if it tanked, then I'm like, yeah, this is not stable. Like, but the fact that it's been stable, and I remember that because I remember I sold at like $2,000, and I was like, yeah, I did well, and then it's just like, it just stayed there, and I was just like, this is crazy. And I always wondered. I guess everybody wants that part of their collection. It's one of the cards because that was the main chase when we were all young. And PSA 10 is crazy because that's one of the most printed cards out there, right? So it makes sense that why there's like 4,000 of them out there. But yeah, I would pick the PSA 10 Griffey Upper Deck, but I would say I would be concerned still. Pop 4,000 is too much.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to add to that conversation with Deep Value Investor, that's why he's into BGS 10. More scarce.
That's a good play. That would be a good alternative play to PSA, in my opinion. Yes, absolutely.
Because it'll be nearly impossible to get a BGS 10 of that card these days, right? You know, before the show, I was just kind of doing my research to see like, oh wow, this might be a mute point, because that Topps Chrome Ken Griffey Jr. card. Okay, I think this is the one that sold for under the 1,800. Sold for 1,300.
Right, makes sense.
But the other ones are still, the two listed right now are still above. So maybe that guy got a good deal for it, and I don't know if that's the new going rate, because there's if there's two listed, one sold. There's only 47 more. So it is, it's pretty much a gold, right? Number to 50.
Right.
Damn, that card looks nice though.
It is a nice looking
2024
card.
Topps Chrome.
It is a nice looking card. But that's why it's like, don't get too wooed on the looks because it is manufactured just recently. Ken Griffey Jr. autographs are available, just to get in general. So I wouldn't put too much stock in that. Not trying to influence you in any way, but
You know what? But that's what I was wondering though. So I'm looking at the cards, and I don't see a lot of on-card autos. Maybe there's some sticker auto cards out there, and there's some IP autos of the Ken Griffey 1989. And those are going for a pretty penny. But I don't see like a lot of
on-card autos for Ken Griffey Jr.
Like on-card autos in packs, not IP autos. Do you know what I mean? There's a bunch of buybacks. That's fine, but that's different too. You know what I mean? I feel like this is a little different. Like I feel like Sandy Koufax, who also has an on-card auto in the 2024 Topps Chrome, I think he has more on-card autos in packs than Ken Griffey Jr., to tell you the truth.
But I will say, Clark, I'm on eBay right now,
Okay.
And I just searched Ken Griffey Jr. on card auto. And you could get a really nice Topps Finest, and there's cheaper than this, Topps Finest on card auto, beautiful looking card, and it's listed for $4.99 or best offer.
I see it.
And there's some cool on card autos. There is, but yeah, just throwing it out there.
Yeah. You know what? You got me. Upper Deck for the win.
$199, or you mean the PSA 10?
PSA 10.
Okay.
Yeah. Although I'm in the same boat as you, if it drops to 1,000, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For that pop count.
Yeah.
But you're right. I could just buy this Topps Finest. Damn, it's not a bad looking card.
It's a great looking card. I mean, don't get me wrong. The 2024 Topps Chrome Ken Griffey Jr. is an unbelievable looking card. It's probably one of the better looking Ken Griffey Jr. cards out there, but I think you could get the same thing in a different way.
Quick revision to that 1v1 then. Same question. The Upper Deck versus the Topps Chrome, this year's Topps Chrome Auto, if they were both going for $1,000.
Yeah, I'd still pick the Upper Deck. I think
Upper Deck?
That's a great buy at 1,000, I think.
Okay. All right. It's tempting for me at that point for the Topps Chrome Auto.
I think it would be more fair if you went $2,000 for the Upper Deck. You paying $2,000 for the Upper Deck versus $1,000 for the.
Oh, that's a good one
for the auto.
Yeah, I'll go for the auto in that case.
Yeah, I might go for the auto at $1,000.
All right, there you go. There's some extra pick one picks for you guys this episode. All right, thanks again to all our subscribers and listeners. I believe last time we checked, if you add all the Apple podcast subscribers we have and all the Spotify podcast subscribers we have, we're over 2,000 now, and that's not even including our Amazon podcast followers. So we thank all of you guys for tuning in week after week, and we'll definitely work on having some great future shows for you guys. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.